Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne. Our guest today is Yoni Zierler. He'll correct me if I pronounce that incorrectly. But Yoni, for people that don't know who you are, could you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Hi, thanks for having me. So yes, my name is Yoni Zierler. You aced it, Andrew. I am almost 35 years old. I live today in Jerusalem. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and a couple other places in the United States. Today, I'm the director of tourism and in-house guide for Stand With Us here in Israel. In a nutshell, and I imagine that we'll expand on this, I'm here building content and guiding tours and building delegations and guiding delegations and overseeing tourism operations for Stand With Us, which is a international, nonpartisan, nonprofit Israel education organization.
Okay, and then people hear this, they say, we like the sound of what they're doing. Where can they find out more about it? And where can they follow you as well? Because I know sometimes you put stuff up on your own pages and things like that.
Yeah, so Stand With Us, obviously our website is standwithus.com. We're on just about every single social media, digital platform that there is. Twitter, Facebook, of course, Instagram, and TikTok as well. I don't know anything about TikTok. I just know that we have TikTok. And you can follow me at Yoni Zierler on Instagram. You can follow that on Twitter as well, but you won't find much. And I have a professional Facebook page, Yoni Zierler Tours in Israel.
Okay, I will find a bunch of those links. I'll put them in the description box so that if you're listening, you're watching this, they're there ready for you to go and check out. Yoni, could you, before we start talking more about what's going on today, what you're involved with, could you just give us a bit of your background? And also in that, how did you end up moving to Israel?
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up in the United States, born in Portland, Maine, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Like I said, my father is an Orthodox rabbi, a modern Orthodox rabbi. So for most of the years of my childhood, he was a pulpit rabbi, which is why we ended up moving around. I spent a couple of years in Memphis as well. I'm not sure if we talked about that and traded stories. At the end of 11th grade, my father received an offer to spend 2 years on a fellowship in Israel. I was actually supposed to stay in Memphis and finish up my last year of high school. A lot of things started aligning, a lot of divine intervention. A month before school started, I made the decision to leave my senior year of high school in the States, move to Israel, and start everything new with the thought that, okay, I'm going and I'm going to stay. My family's always been a Zionist family. My father grew up in the Bnei Akiva modern Orthodox youth movement. I was a member of that youth movement as well. From a young age, there was this idea of Israel is the homeland for the Jewish people, and it's a good idea to go and to live there. So when I had the chance, I said, it'd be a little silly for me not to take advantage of this. 2 years with my family in Israel and Jerusalem specifically meant that I had a cushion. I had a safety zone to come back to as I started the process of acclimation. I did it. I went to the Hartman High School here in Jerusalem. It was the best year of my life. I've made friends that have been with me now for these 18 years. They adopted me. Their families took me in when my parents went back after the fellowship. I rolled from there, from my last year of high school, to a 6-year stint in a Hesder Yeshiva. That's a Talmudic academy that combines studies with army service. 4 years of studies and 2 years in between. So it was 2 years of studies, 2 years of army service, and 2 years of studies is how it broke down. I was a non-commissioned officer training new recruits in the Kfir Brigade, the Duchifat Battalion. So that's an infantry brigade. And when I got to my last year of yeshiva, I started taking a look around and saying, okay, so now what? I've spent these past 6 years here. I've had this incredible experience. There was a part of me that was saying somewhat subconsciously, how did I get here? why did I make that crazy decision, the last year of high school to take that plunge? And I kind of wanted to explore it. I'm not sure I said it quite out loud like that, but over the years, that's like come out in all the therapy sessions, right? Like we're getting to know myself as I wanted to explore what was it that drew me here to make that crazy jump. But I already spent 6 years kind of trying to get to know myself in yeshiva and in the army. It wasn't going to go over well to tell my parents I'm going another 2 years to try to figure out why I'm here in Israel. So I did the next best thing, and I joined the tour guiding course. Then it was a 2-year tour guiding course by official Ministry of Tourism tour guiding course. 80 field trips, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of in-class lectures. And somehow, by the grace of God, a month before I got married, I actually passed my licensing exams. It was not a stressful period at all. I passed those exams, got married a month later, freelanced for about a year and a half. And again, a little bit of a divine intervention when my wife and I were starting to think about what does the future look like? Right? How are we going to build a family if I'm on the road so often? A position opened up to be a missions and delegations coordinator at StandWithUs, and I had done an Israel fellowship with StandWithUs. It basically was a public diplomacy course over a year, giving me basic skills to be able to talk about Israel and share my Israel story wherever I was. Our alumni network now has about 2,000 people in it. Back then it was a little bit less. So I was able to kind of, stand out a little bit more when they advertised this position. I interviewed, I got accepted, and 7.5 years later, I'm the director of tourism here, and having the time of my life, getting to show people Israel from up close and introduce them to the facts in the field.
Are you out of breath?
Yeah, it feels like I've been on tour with Yoni.
Well, I mean, you could press pause on so many points along the way. I mean, what a story. Let's just press pause on a couple of them. When you say moving to Israel, I mean, in my perception, my experience, moving to Israel isn't like just moving to another country. There is so much that is involved with it, from the language to re-establishing yourself, the culture, etc., etc. How did you handle that? I mean, the language for a start.
All right. So look, I had I don't know if it's an unfair advantage, but I had an advantage that I wasn't coming to Bula Rasa. I grew up in a modern Orthodox household. I went to Jewish day school for all of those years. I'm going to give a shout out to Tammy Goldberg, my Hebrew teacher in Cleveland, who at the time I would argue ran one of the best Hebrew programs in the country, if not the best. I'm not going to say I was fluent when I came here, but I was able to converse. Nothing prepares you, though, for that first day in high school. All of the English speakers in my grade were off on a Poland trip. I show up and it's just the Israelis. It's like, okay, here we go. Let's see where my Hebrew actually is. And then all the slang starts coming out. Right. And that's the real push. You have to go from this quasi-biblical Hebrew to these modern terms that make no sense. Like they look at me and they go, so are you a shminist? I'm looking around going, am I? And my friends are like, yeah. I'm like, I'm a shminist. Only afterwards did I discover a shminist is the Hebrew term for a senior. And it's because at the end of your senior year, you'll be 18. So shmone, right? Shmone became shminist. It's like this bizarre slang. And I haven't even gotten to the army slang yet, but already in high school, it's like, okay, so there's some words that I'm gonna have to learn. And I came into speaking very proper Hebrew. Things that, it's almost like I'm saying, it wasn't quite Shakespearean, but there are these terms that you're like, it's beaten into you in day school. You have to say it like this. Then you come here, you say it and like, oh, nobody says it like that. We say it, like this. I'm like, but that's not correct. I'm like, well, who cares? That's how we speak. But I caught on. That was part of the reason why I was like, okay, my parents are moving to Israel. I have the chance to spend a year in an Israeli high school. I would like to study in an Israeli yeshiva, and be fully immersed in Hebrew. This is my opportunity. It's basically, it was Ulpan on steroids. Ulpan is the training course for Hebrew that a lot of Olim Chadashim, a lot of new immigrants take. This was the one where you weren't just showing up for class. I mean, I was showing up for class, but I had to actually deal in this language almost the entire day. So by the time I got to yeshiva, I was still clearly an immigrant, but I could speak. By the time I got back from the army, guys who were with me for the first 2 years in yeshiva, who weren't with me in the army, were looking at me like, yo, next level, really impressive. It's all about immersion. And that was the thing, is that I knew that if I came in my last year of high school, and I had that soft landing, even my first year of yeshiva, which was a complete shock. My first time living outside of my house, living in the middle of nowhere in the southern Hebron Hills, and having that crash pad that was my parents' house, right? Being able to come back there was how I knew I can make this work. And that's something that most, I would say, immigrants, most Olim don't have, that I had, which was huge in me being able to make a smooth transition.
Before you moved to Israel, you grew up in a Zionist family, you said, but what was your general perspective of Israel? What was your thoughts of what it might be like? I know people, when they haven't been there, that generally they take what they're told in the media, they develop these perspectives of what they think it's like, and often they go there and they find out actually this isn't the way it is. But what perspective did you have before going to move there? And then how did that change once you arrived?
It's a great question. Look, again, I was in a Zionist school, so there was a good sense of what was going on. I knew it wasn't camels and constant warfare. Although, look, I grew up during the Second Intifada. That's how I came into being, in terms of my Israel activism and my identity and my connection with Israel. So, there were things that were happening that I was aware of were dangerous and were not my norm in America. I would say, if you really want to know what my perspectives and how they changed, you got to go back to when I was like 13. I think that was the first time I came to Israel with my family over the summer, at least the first one that I can remember. And my Bubby, my grandmother, laughed at me when I was describing what I was going to do, because I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to the kosher Burger King and I'm going to go to the kosher Kentucky Fried Chicken. And she's like, you're just going to eat your way through the country, huh? I'm like, yeah. I mean, that was when I was young, that was what I was really going for. It's because, but there's more to it, right? Because it is the only place in the world where I can just walk along the street and be like, okay, I'm going to get something to eat now, and go get something to eat. I mean, I know a lot of people don't realize it. When I was a kid and we would go on flights to the States, flights throughout the States, not even international travel, my mother always had to pack food for us because, there weren't going to be kosher snacks on the plane. And at one point I wanted to share with one of the kids who was next to me. And she said, no, we don't share snacks, not because we're not nice people, but because if God forbid something happens and we get stuck, I need to make sure that we have kosher food. So that idea of, kosher food as being on every street corner, as laughable as it might seem, and it seemed to my grandmother, there was a part of that there's a deeper statement there of, this is a place where, for me, I can feel comfortable as a Jew and have the most, what to many people would seem like the most basic comforts and the most basic needs available to me. My perspective, I would say, changed over the years because it grew out of the food into really fully understanding what that rich Jewish culture is like, and discovering the mosaic of Jewish cultures that exists here, the different traditions in that the Sephardic, the Middle Eastern Jews have compared to what I grew up as an Ashkenazi Jew, a Jew from European descent. Being immersed in just that Jewish culture, having off days, vacation days that circle around the Jewish calendar. That was something, where all of a sudden it was like, this is much bigger than what I thought it was. When it comes to the regular perceptions that people have, like I said, I knew what was going on. I knew that there was there was a normal life to be had there, and I also knew of what the challenges were. I'll never forget kind of one of the turning points, I would say, in my identity as somebody who loved Israel and connected with Israel was, I guess it was 8th grade. The Second Intifada was raging then in Israel. And my Hebrew teacher, that same Mrs. Goldberg, who I mentioned before, she came into Hebrew class, and the first thing she said was, there was a terror attack this morning on Hillel Street. Now, my father, in one of his previous fellowships, brought us to spend the summer in Israel, for 3 straight summers, and our apartment was right off of Hillel Street. So when I heard that, it was no longer just this story or these numbers that you couldn't place a face to and you didn't know where they were. It was very, very real. I was shaken. I started crying in the middle of class because, it in a way, it already had felt like my neighborhood. 2 or 3 summers that I'd already spent walking around those streets, never forget when I made my way from the apartment to Machane Yehuda, to the shuk for the first time, to the market for the first time, and bought sunflower seeds in Hebrew, right? Those are like big moments in my life. As funny and small as they might sound, like those are milestones, and then all of a sudden to hear that street that I had so many memories on had been the site of a terror attack, and to be able to place it in my mind was heartbreaking and shook me to the core.
So I just want to make a little side comment here. When you said I became a tour guide, right? I just want to press pause there, because just becoming a tour guide is huge from what I understand. Absolutely huge. I mean, we have tour guides on our tours all the time. And I don't know, I try to impress people the appreciation of being a tour guide. Just give us just a few minutes. I don't dwell there too long, but because many people listening will probably have had some, many of them won't, but some of them will have had experience of the tour guide. Just give us a brief overview of the end exam, as it were, the questions you get asked. What is that like at the end when you have to pass?
Are you paying for my next therapy session now that I have to the therapy session? I'm not sure. So first of all, there's 2 stages to it, or at least there still are 2 stages. It's changed over the past couple of years. They've made it easier. I'm not supposed to say it out loud because I'll insult the younger tour guides. They've cut down the tours by about 20 field trips. It's not as long. You can do it in under a year and a half now, whereas for me it was like 2 years. And then I think I spent a good half a year sitting in the library and just studying. There's 2 parts. First, you have the written exam, which is basically you have to write out, or at least for me, again, it's changed. I had to write out 2 days of what a trip looked like, with bullet points of what I'm going to do, what I'm going to guide, as well as the logistics. And then I needed to take one of those points and write out a full guiding point, a page-long guiding point. Thank God I did very well on that. One of the best pieces of advice that I got was, especially as somebody coming in with a kippah on my head, and identifiably Orthodox, study up on your Christian theology and tradition, because in the next step, which is the oral exam, and I'll get to that, they like to trip you up. They always look for your weak points. So I came in, I had done all these practice exams preparing for Christian day tours, and all of a sudden they go, okay, 2 days in the Galilee, right, in the north, Christian tour. You must visit Nazareth and you must visit Mount Tabor. It's like, okay, so first of all, you've written half of the day for me, great. And second of all, it's like, great, thank you. Like, what could be better than taking 2 days around the Galilee and in these areas, because I had been studying this and been really had a enjoyment learning all of these new traditions and these stories that I hadn't known before. So thank God I did really well with that. And not to say I wasn't shaking the entire time I was writing, because I was. And then about a month later, it's like, it's so fast that because I had the wedding, I took maybe 2 days off to breathe. And then I was like, okay, I don't know if I passed or not. I'm going to start studying already, because the next thing is basically they put you in front of a firing squad. It's like 6 people in the room, all of them veteran tour guides, and one is actually a tour operator agent. And then they sit there, you give a 5-minute, or at least in my time, it's changed, but I gave a 5-minute presentation. And then they just start going at it. Okay, you said this. Can you answer this question? Can you answer this question? Oh, very interesting. You mentioned that something about churches that are outside of the old city. You mentioned something about the Russian compound and the churches that are there. What other Russian churches can you talk about? Where would you take me in Jerusalem to see a Russian church? Oh God! And like, if you leave them you give them a little bit too much information, they just seize it and try to take you there, to hit you wherever they can. But I think like the point where I realized I was going to be kind of okay was when the tour agent looks at me and goes, "Okay, now a tour agent question. I'm planning a day trip around the Lake of Galilee in the Galilee for Christians. Where would you take me?" I'm like, okay, we've already done this. Let's go. All right. And so thank God I passed. But it's really like, now I think they take you into the field. They make you guide in the field, and they ask you all these questions in the field. So it's you kind of, I'm not going to say that I have encyclopedic knowledge, because there's a lot more for me to learn, and I'm constantly learning. They like to say that tour guides in Israel have to know a little about a lot. And you really have to have a basic understanding, and at least have the cliff notes in your head, so that when the tours come around, you get hit with something new. You go, okay, I know that I need to address points A, B, and C. I don't remember exactly what all the details are, but that's where I'm going to start, and that's how I'm going to build this experience for people.
Well, I would just like to say that I presume where they said if it was Christians around Galilee, where would you take them? I presume you said stick them in a boat and push them into the middle of the sea, and they'll be quite happy, right?
That was one of the activities.
You were also like, in the build up to your wedding, going, this Jesus guy turned water into wine. I could do with some of that at my wedding.
That's right. It was a part of me that's like, all right, maybe we should go. Of course, now I'm having the blank out because it's not Capernaum. Maybe we should go to Kafr Kana and have our wedding there, right? after all of this, no, we got married on the way to Jerusalem. We didn't quite go the full route of the first miracle. Even though for me, one of the first miracles of my adult life was passing that exam.
Well, I just want to say here, we'll move on to what your passion is now, Yoni, but we have had you as a tour guide when we did our Quest for Truth tour, and I would say we not only loved all you told us, but we loved who you were, and I think that makes such a difference. We laughed, and it wasn't all serious with the young people, and I think for us, a tour guide isn't just about what you know, it's the person you are and the connection you build. And so we really, really, really appreciated that so much. So now, here we are, 2023, a few years down the line for when you did Quest for Truth with us, and certainly a few years down the line from Ohio. What is your passion now? What is your focus? What is it that you sort of, at this moment in time, are saying, this is what I need to be doing?
Passion is an interesting term, because I'm passionate about a lot of things. So I don't want to just put this in a box, because I'm passionate about religion and all religions. I think that might have come out in the last couple of questions. I love theology, and I love traditions. I love the stories from all of the different religions. I'm very passionate about that. My focus today, and I am passionate about it as well. My big focus is introducing people to what I say is the facts in the field, right? To really be able to understand what is going on beyond the headlines. We throw that around a lot, and it's kind of a cliche. But my big thing is to take people to see sites that are key to understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So going down to the Gaza envelope, similar to what actually we didn't do this together because I had something else that day. But when you went with Chevy in Quest for Truth down to the Gaza envelope to the Sderot area to gaze into Gaza and to understand the challenges that exist both in Gaza and in Israel, how Israel tries to deal with these challenges and to protect innocent lives, I would say, on both sides the best it can in the face of terrorist organization like Hamas. Understanding the division and reunification of Jerusalem, 1948 till 1967, and today, the issues that came up, that still come up, that we're still dealing with, because there's a lot to unpack that's there, and some of the successes that exist there as well. Of course, taking a look at the security barrier, understanding the context for why Israel built that security barrier at the height of that second intifada, which we touched on earlier, and going into the area of Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, places like Gush Etzion, the Binyamin region, which I did do with you, to really see what is this when we talk about a settlement. What are we talking about? When we talk about Israeli communities, who are beyond the green line, what exactly does that mean? What are these people thinking? And so I love that ability to go into these areas. I think more than anything, to show people that it's not black and white. There's these amazing shades of gray and color and nuance. And really, we have this rabbinical saying that "Inna doma shmiya l'ri'iyah," right? Hearing is not the same as seeing. And that's kind of become my mantra over the past few years. It's what I always say to groups when I start and when I end. This is the goal today, is to take you and turn you into somebody who, up until this point, you were consumers of, third person ideas and third person perspectives. I want to make you a first person source for everyone who you're going to meet afterwards. And we're not going to see it all. I'm not going to talk about it all. I'm still learning. Charlotte, who I know was on the show with you, Charlotte and I are always talking about the fact that, to quote her, we dig. We think we finally hit bedrock, and then we realize there's another 10 layers to this conflict that we had no idea about. But it's that first step of going there and seeing it with your own eyes. I guided a group of Australians, 21 Australian students who just finished high school, Jewish students. This was a couple of weeks ago. I got to spend 4 days with them in the field. And I took them to see Eastern Jerusalem. I took them to see the Gaza envelope. I took them to see Gush Etzion in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. And at a certain point, all of a sudden it clicked. They were having trouble understanding. They started mixing terms. And I looked at them and I said, "Well, hold on. Let's be clear. Let's make some sense out of this. We've seen 3 areas that are very similar and have very similar backstories to them and very similar challenges, but they're also, each one of them is very different. And there's even these kids who are somewhat in the know, right? They were immediately drawn to making comparisons, not making comparisons, but to taking what they learned in East Jerusalem and applying it to the Gaza envelope and the West Bank, Judea, Samaria. And I had to stop and say, you can't do that, right? These are 3 different areas. And that's one of the things that until you're there and until you're experiencing it and seeing it and dealing with these issues and actually being able to see these issues, you can't comprehend. And I think that, most of the world lumps all of these things together. There are people who know and who are able to differentiate, but I think the majority of the world doesn't know, and they're lumping the challenges and the issues that happen in the Gaza Strip and Israel's communities on the border with the Gaza Strip in with what's going on in the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. And Eastern Jerusalem, and it's so much more complicated. There's they each have their own details that are so critical to understanding what has been done, where there might still be things that need to be improved, what can be done, what should be done, and having those meaningful conversations that we really believe in at Stand With Us. At the end of the day, we believe that education is the road to peace. And it all starts with being able to sort this out, to see it with your own eyes, and become that first person source who has a better sense of what's going on.
It's I know one of the things that really came out, and I keep going back to Quest for Truth just because it's our point place actually with you, but that they came away not only with a greater, not a full by any means, greater understanding of the nuances and the differences here, but also a greater understanding of what is going on with the average person as opposed with the leadership of places, and what is going on with the average person as opposed to where history has taken them. And even within, say, the Gaza Strip, you've got all those dynamics and more, I suspect, to unpack. Am I right?
It is. Oh my gosh. The challenge, I have to say, I've been doing this for a while now, 7.5 years in the organization. In the beginning, I was hesitant to take on the geopolitical guiding. It took me a few years, and, watching other guides and learning and researching, and writing up actual roots and what I'm going to say. And, I'm pretty well read at this point. Again, so much more to learn, but I have a pretty good understanding. I know more or less what I'm going to say. And still, the night before a lot of these tours, my guts just start turning themselves inside out, because you're absolutely right. You've got historical facts, geopolitical realities. On top of that, you've got personal perspectives and lived realities that you can't just brush them off, right? Lived reality, even if there's legal issues or it's legally justified, and you want to go by textbook definitions, you can't just say, you can't just ignore lived realities on either side of this conflict. And at the end of, throughout, I'm going, I'm nonpartisan. And I truly believe educationally, my job is not to give my opinion. My job is to present the most balanced an accurate and factual presentation that there is, and allow people to make up their minds for themselves. And so, before and after, there's this constant, did I do it? Oh, shoot, I forgot to talk about this. Did that skew it? Were they able to get the full understanding? And it's impossible to get everything in. There are times where I'll walk away from a full day to even these 3 days with these kids from 3 days and dealing with conflict, 1 day in Haifa, looking at Israeli multiculturalism, but I still walk away and I go, there was so much more to talk about. There was so much more. And what do I do with that? And you're right, there's just all of these levels, and I try to unpack them. I think I do the best job that I can at the end of the day, if I may say so myself. But this is one of these things when you're dealing with the reality in Israel and the reality of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict specifically. Yeah, it's just one of these things where it's a lot of deep breaths and trying to give the best, the best perspective on it all, the best perspectives, I should say, that you can. And it's a huge challenge, and then there's times where I also have to say to people, listen, I can't go into this right now. Here's some sources for you to look into, right? Or, let's be honest, if we're talking, I have to try to be balanced, saying, and we've got to be honest, I'm trying to give you a Palestinian perspective right now, but I'm also not Palestinian, and sometimes they can meet Palestinians. It's happened. Quest for Truth. I know you definitely met a lot of Palestinians. We try to, when we can, allow that voice to be heard as well, so they really get the full understanding of what's going on. But there are times where, for whatever reasons, if it's financial or logistical and the amount of time that we have, it doesn't happen. But it's one of those things where we have to say, okay, but there's still another piece of the puzzle here, right? And there's always all these other little pieces of the puzzle that you just can't get to for these different reasons. I feel like now I've really gone into therapy mode with you. I'm unpacking all of the frustrations, the challenges, the beautiful frustrations, right? What a blessing it is that that these are the frustrations of my day job, right?
We're taking notes so that next time we can continue to unpack these things in our next session.
Yeah. One of the things that really, really, really appreciate Stand With Us, I mean, there's many of them, and I would say to people listening, we always make it a point in our tours to bring the groups to stand with us and to expose them to not only the work, but to be able to ask questions, etc. But I remember I think it was the first time, or one of the first times, we just walked through your doors. I mean,
it was in the build-up to when we were exploring doing Quest for Truth.
Yeah. And somebody said to us, I don't know what it is, who it was, would you like to come and listen? We've got a group in the education room. So we said, sure. And we went in, and you had somebody who was a Palestinian speaking to this room full of students. And I'm listening thinking, this is wild. Are these people crazy?
He was saying some pretty interesting things as well.
And I'm listening thinking, have I got it wrong who these people are? I was just listening to it all completely blown away. And afterwards I said to whoever it was, it might have been Chevy, I don't know. And we said, are you not afraid that listening to all this, they're going to be taken away by it? And she said, if you have the truth, you shouldn't be afraid of exposing them to hearing the other side. And I would say that this changed us. That moment changed us and the way that we approach things. We have quoted that many times to people who said, oh, but you shouldn't, oh, but you shouldn't. And we have gone back to that moment in time. So personally, and for us as an organisation, that moment made a difference to us. So thank you. Thank you for being an organisation that will open the doors and allow the voices of others to be heard.
Thank you.
We're talking a lot about things that are going on in Israel. Of course, there's a lot of Jewish community still all over the world. And we see a lot of anti-Semitism on the rise. What's your perspective of where we're at in terms of anti-Semitism around the world?
I think he will need therapy after this question.
Or a stiff drink. Look, first of all, I only realized this the other week when I was with these Australian kids. I had this turning point moment. They wanted to hear my political opinions, which is not something that I reveal on tour. My line is, if you want my political opinion, when everything's done, when we've wrapped this all up, when you've started to make your opinion, we can sit down and on outside of program time and we can talk about it. So I went up and I went and met up with them at their hotel. And we were hanging out in the lobby, and kids who were not part of this track, but part of this greater program that they were on, they showed up to come and talk. And one of the girls, who was there says to me, look, I am a manager at McDonald's. That's what I do, to finance my studies. And people come up to me, my employees come up to me, and they're always asking me my opinion on Israel. Right? They know I'm Jewish. They're asking my opinion on Israel, and they're coming at me, and they won't talk with me when I tell them that I'm Jewish or that I support Israel. And what should we do? And I had to say to her, and this is why I'm bringing this up. First of all, I applaud you, and you have to understand that what you're dealing with, the challenges that you're dealing with right now as a Jew living in the diaspora, are challenges that I don't have. Right? I live here. We talked about being immersed in that culture. I live here, and there is it's not a full bubble. I'm clearly aware of what's going on, but part of the blessing of being here is that in my day-to-day life, I don't encounter anti-Semitism the way that she did. Right, that's clear anti-Semitism. Somebody who's coming up to her, and because she's Jewish, attacking her about what Israel did or didn't do, without even asking her take on it, which was one of the things she was. I mean, that's ugly, and doesn't leave room for dialogue and conversation. Two Jews were shot at in LA this past week. The horrific attacks that we've seen at synagogues all over the world. I'll tell you this: I went to Cleveland, Liberute. I went to Cleveland over the summer, and we went to synagogue, and we walk up to the synagogue, and what I see are a police squad car and the private security of the Jewish Federation in the area. Now, when I was growing up, to put this in perspective, when I was growing up in Cleveland, there were days, literally days, that we would see a squad car in front of my father's synagogue, and that was, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. High holidays, my father would always call up the police department and say, hey, we're going to have a lot of people coming in and out. Can you just park a car there with a police officer for these couple of days to make sure that everything's okay? Which is already a weird thing to have to ask. I looked at my father as we're walking past. I'm like, what's going on? What is this? He goes, welcome to our reality now. After the Tree of Life, right after the attack in Pittsburgh, there was no more luxury of just hoping that it was going to be okay. That is a reality that's on the ground. That's not even dealing with the day-to-day onslaught. Anyone who's online, who expresses an opinion on Israel, or who expresses their Judaism, is proud of their Jewish identity, and they're just like, the trolls come at them like crazy. And it's so on the one hand, I'm shielded from it on my day-to-day life. That's one of the benefits of living in Israel. On the other hand, I'm not blind. I look around and I see it and I go, this is terrifying. You can quantify this, right? We've gone from a squad car in front of a synagogue 2 days a year to a squad car in front of a synagogue a night and a day, right? So you get Shabbat, Friday night and Shabbat day. So call it however you want, 1 day, 2 days, but a week, right? That's crazy to think that that's our reality right now. And I would say that the online bullying and anti-Semitism and what we're seeing on campuses, that is also, that it's all connected. They feed into each other, and the more a blind eye is turned to it, the more people kind of shrug it off, downplay it. It's just somebody who's being rude online. It all feeds and builds into this dynamic, and you end up with kids who are trying to be proud of their identity in this world that is all about be proud of who you are, embrace your inner conflicts, right? Be who you're supposed to be, and Jewish students are trying to do that, but the hate has gone so viral and is tangible in so many ways that it really makes it challenging. And they are proud, and I'm proud of them for being proud. But yeah, and we're in a state in this world where I don't know where it's going, but I think we all need to do a little bit of soul searching in understanding how we lower the flames of hate and the casual anti-Semitism and the anti-Semitic tropes. I didn't mean that anti-Semitic trope. I didn't realize it was an anti-Semitic trope, as we've been hearing from all sorts of celebrities over the past year. All of this has a real impact, and it's not easy. It's terrifying.
I have heard that word terrifying many times from Jewish people like yourself. This is just my personal opinion. I think anti-Semitism, well, there are no words for it. It's awful. Standing by Israel, so grateful for your organisation, which equips people to be able to do that. But the thing that terrifies me and that I hate most is silence. I mean, I think people downplay silence. They ignore the power of silence. I don't know if this is right, but it's something I read, and I can quite believe it, that when Hitler came to power, there was anti-Semitism, but it wasn't everybody. It wasn't a huge majority, but it was the silence of the huge majority that allowed that to take place. Now, that might not be factually true, but I have a big thing at the minute, a big thing about the power of silence. And if I'm going to attack something, it's going to be that silence. What do you think? I'm on target or am I off target?
I think it's a huge piece of it. And I'm having one of those moments where I'm put on the spot, and I'm trying to remember the name of the pastor who wrote the famous poem during the time of the Holocaust. I think it was Neiman, right? They came for the communists, and I didn't speak.
Yeah.
I didn't raise my voice, for I was not a communist. They came for the gypsies, and I didn't raise my voice. I'm quoting verbatim. I was silent because I wasn't a gypsy. They came for the Jews, etc., etc. And then they came for me, and there was nobody to raise their voice.
Yeah.
Right. There was no one left to raise their voice. And you should look that up online. I'm not doing it justice. It hangs in Yad Vashem as part of the display for the beginning of the first deportations that Hitler began carrying out. I think that's a huge part of it. We always say when we're talking about Israel education, we're not looking to educate the 5% that's anti-Israel. Right, or the 5% that's anti-Semitic, however you want to look at it, and look at those numbers of 10%. Right, there's all sorts of debates as to what the accurate number is, but you get the point. It's not that the minority of extreme voices, right? We do want to empower the 5% who are with us to be able to stand up stronger for us, but people who are anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, they're not coming for the most part. There are exceptions, but for the most part, they're not coming to have a dialogue. But there's that 80 or 90% of people who don't know, are uninformed, and probably would be very comfortable being silent, not necessarily out of any ill will, just because they don't know or they're not aware or whatever it is. That's who we need to be engaging with more than anyone else, right? To be talking with them, to be opening up this dialogue with people who are willing to listen, who are willing to learn, who might also push back, right? I have no problem with somebody coming and criticizing policies and asking questions about Israeli policies. I don't know if you notice what's going on in the country right now, but there's plenty of people who are out there taking to the streets, protesting and criticizing policy. We're a democracy. That's what we do. The important thing is to have that dialogue, for people to be able to ask their questions, to understand, to be comfortable also, and then getting up and saying, well, hold on, what you're saying is not factually accurate, or even more than that, what you're saying is hateful, racist, and anti-Semitic. The Jewish people are a fraction of a fraction of the world. And if we don't have people who are standing up for us when they see that wrongs are being committed, if we don't have allies, then I think, I don't know what the future will hold, but some form of history is going to repeat itself, because the anti-Semitism, we've seen it throughout history in some form or another. And maybe this is my chance to also thank you for being such good friends to Israel and to the Jewish people, and to constantly being out there and educating that majority and encouraging them not to be silent, because without that, what are we going to do? We need friends. We need to have those relationships. Some people like to call them strategic relationships, but it's more than that, right? It's just a human relationship, in being able to identify what's wrong, what's right, and what's wrong in this world. I say there's a lot of gray in the world, but there's also some things that are black and white. And we need to be able to call out what's good and bad, and to make our voices heard.
Yeah. I'll just say one more thing. I'll hand it over to you to wherever you want to take it. But I think you're a lot more merciful towards people than I am. I'm a bit more like, this just is not on. But then maybe that's the power I have as coming from the nations, that I can do that. You've talked a lot about young people, and that is your target. And we're called generation to generation, or door for door. So our target is there. But anybody who's listening, and there probably are a lot of people who are not of that generation, they're more in my generation, the parents' generation. do we get an opt-out on this? I mean, your focus is the young people. Does that mean, hey, good, we're cool, we'll just let
we'll
you
leave it to Stand With Us.
We'll leave it to Stand With Us, we're good. I mean, what would you say to my generation and the generation of parents that are out there?
Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor velo ata ben chorin libatel mimena. You know that one. You don't have to finish the work. It's not your obligation to finish the work, but you're also not free to just let it go and to give up on it. Whatever stage you are in life, it happens to be that one of the more natural dynamics and demographics that we're working with are youth, because they have the time to come here. They have these programs. There's the infrastructure for there to come here. But it doesn't matter what age you are, and you're not too young, you're not too old, never too young and never too old to learn something new and to educate yourself. And you're definitely not never too young or too old to stand up and speak out when you see something wrong that's being done. And we're open. Stand With Us operates in a lot of different arenas. Talking about what I do right here physically on the ground. That's my passion. That's what I love doing. But the part of our online presence is about engaging people of all ages and giving them the basic facts. Hopefully they build on that as well. There's only so much you can get in that, 244 character tweet. But it's the beginning. We want to spark the conversation, spark the question, help people understand that there's more to be learned, and give the facts when we're able to give them. I think we do a great job of giving bite-sized, digestible information. We're on campuses and high schools and elementary, middle schools, around the world. We have programs to work with students, but we're also engaging communities around the world, and we'd love to bring our speakers to speak to your community wherever it might be. I flew to Norway in November and spoke to about 100 Norwegians of all ages, from university students to grandparents who were sitting in that room. Everyone has what to learn, and we're happy to speak with everyone. We're happy to engage with everyone. The more people, the more the merrier. There's, like you said, there's this core of people in this world that 80-90% that we're talking about. I'm not breaking that down into ages. Everyone should be involved, and we love engaging and speaking with everyone and learning from everyone also, right? There's a certain level of experience and knowledge that adults have that children don't have, and there's a certain level of energy and innocence and passion that students bring. Everyone brings their own thing to the table, and we love all of it.
Yeah, it's so important that parents don't just leave the raising of their kids to other people and to education systems and to, whatever systems there are out there that are raising the next generation as parents. You should be the ones primarily responsible for raising them, and it's important that you are a part of this journey in helping to raise your kids to be willing to stand up, to be voices for truth, and to be light when darkness is there.
I don't think you know a moment in your life where you didn't know about Israel and stand.
And why was that?
Why was that? Because my parents did the same with me.
Right, and then you did for me, and so generation to generation.
You got to learn. Yeah.
And you've said a few times about learning and educating yourself. So for people listening, often we might just see something in the media, we kind of take it at face value and kind of run with it. For people though, we're saying, no, don't just believe straight away what you're hearing. Start to educate yourself, do some research. What are some places? I mean, obviously, I recommend people go check out Stand With Us. They've got a bunch of resources. They've got things that can help you to be able to reply to some of the sort of hot topics. What are the sort of chief criticisms of Israel, and give you some education in terms of how you can reply to those things. But what are some other places that you might recommend that you could say to people that if you see something in the news, maybe check out a few of these sources and try and get a bit of a fuller picture of what might be going on?
Right. So people all the time, students will ask me, people ask me, I'm looking for an unbiased news source. And the first thing I tell them is okay, so you got to read everything, right? If you want to get a sense of what's going on, first and foremost, you have to know that you have to get all of the different perspectives, right? So I can tell you the sources that I find to be the most balanced and factual and truthful. But if you really want that full perspective, you've got to do a little digging yourself. I'm a big fan. If we're talking about news, I can tell you my routine in the morning is I open up the Times of Israel. Then I open up the Jerusalem Post, and I open up the Yediot Ahronot, the Ynet webpage, one of the Hebrew web pages to read through and get the different perspectives on what's going on there. I'm a big fan. I will say of definitely of David Horowitz of the Times of Israel. The editorial staff of the Jerusalem Post is also great. I want to give him a shout out as well. I think between the two of those, you read those opinions and you get a sense of what's going on. That's for day to day. If you want to start diving deep, right, and really getting the greater context and the history. I mean, there's so much. I feel like I kind of need to send you a book list, a recommended reading that to share with readers. I'll tell you that I am now towards the end of Daniel Gordis's Israel: A Concise History of a Nation Reborn, which as somebody I've learned this different lectures and classes and tours and articles and reading all that, but he does a very good job of summarizing the history of modern Zionism and Israel in this book, and I think that he's fairly balanced as well. All of the books written by Professor Gil Troy, who is technically an American presidency historian, but he wrote a fabulous book called Why I'm a Zionist, which was his reaction, his explanation to his academic peers as to why he is a Zionist. And he's written so many other incredible books, including Charlotte and I have a favorite, Moynihan's Moment, about Patrick Daniel Moynihan, excuse me. And the Zionism is Racism resolution that was passed in the UN and how he stood up against it and what the background is to it. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute, a lot of this was, Soviet Russian political maneuvering and propaganda. People don't even realize that. He also wrote a book called The Zionist Ideas, which goes through, the different ideas in the modern Zionist movement. It's not fair. I'm going to forget people. I'm looking around me at bookshelves here, trying to think about what else should I give you. I mean, there's so much. I've got a reading list now. I can't say that I'm on top of it. I got this reading list. Last year I was like, I'm going to try to read a book a month, which obviously did not happen. But there's even with that, I'm looking at it and going like, if I had read a book a month, I'd still be behind. But again, I gave you sources that are very much, the Zionist Israeli sources, and obviously there are other voices out there that if you want a full perspective, you've got to do that comparing and contrasting, and you got to do a little fact checking yourself. But like you said, if you're looking for the cliff notes, then definitely on our Stand With Us website, StandWithUs.com, we have all of our resources there. I just opened up they put together, our incredible research team put together, it was about a 25-page explainer on Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, right? Looking at that region and going through everything from the history to the legalities and really like stuff that I'm looking at it and going, every tour guide should have this in their pocket. I think every person should read through it for a basic sense. I think there's a good sense of where to start unpacking these ideas and having basic facts that are so critical. So I encourage everyone to take a look at our resources, and I'll try to send you a fuller list of books. And my apologies to all of the great scholars and academics who I didn't give a proper shout out to. Oh, I should also say, thinking of some of those incredible academics and minds like Colonel Miri Eisen and former ambassador and MK Dr. Michael Oren. Right? We have a website, StandWithUs.tv, which is kind of like our version of Netflix, where during COVID, as you remember, when we were trying to figure out how do we continue to educate, how do we bring Israel to the people when the people can't come to Israel, and for a while, every week we were having interviews with some of these great minds in the Israeli world, and these, we've got like, I think it's like hour-long sessions. You go on, you click, and you can just we have it on Spotify as well, podcast. You guys, you're doing your dishes, right? You can be listening to these discussions. So I think that's another resource as well. And I probably could keep going on and on and on, but I'm not sure how much I can do at this point.
You've forgotten one.
What's that?
I would recommend people start with the Torah.
Yeah, we have a channel of tours that I give as well, and there's a whole bank of tours somewhere on Facebook when we used to go live every Monday. And we do also, if you're looking for an event, you're looking to do something that's a little bit different. You want to bring Israel to your community. What I started doing was offering private Zoom tours during COVID on behalf of Stand With Us, exploring the Jewish quarter, right? Exploring the Jewish quarter, exploring Old Jaffa. I mean, there's a whole list of places that we can bring into your living room or bring into your community, and you can do a whole Israel night screening it, and walking through these incredible sites while sitting around with friends and family.
Well, I would say that one thing I really admired about those, and I don't know whether they taught you this in your tourism class, but your ability to talk and walk backwards and not fall over was really something I admired when you were doing that filming.
You can't pass your tourism course without
I was
being able
waiting
to
for
do
you
that.
to fall flat as you're walking backwards to the camera. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, Yoni.
He's a man of many talents.
Many talents.
Yeah, that's I don't know. They don't teach that. There's no class yet. Writing course. I'll recommend it that they bring me in, but that's really you just got to be there, and you got to have the confidence, and I'll let you in on the secret. A caring and attentive camera person is very key. There have been a couple of close calls when the camera person's gone, oh, okay, there was a tree branch back there. And it's all live, right? So it's like I got to kind of keep my composure as but thank God, no accidents as of yet. No need to call up the insurance company. Tfu, tfu, tfu.
Yoni, thank you so much. I think you've given something for everyone. I think for people that are already on this journey, are already supportive of Israel as Zionists, there's resources that they could go check out to continue their journey. For people that maybe haven't started the journey, then I want to encourage you to at least start dipping your toes in. Just take one step, even if that's just going checking out Stand With Us and getting the bite-sized things. Just start that journey, and the next time you see someone out there, maybe on social media, maybe you're in person, you're having a chat, and someone says something, and you think, oh, that's not a big deal that they said that. I mean, it's just they've said it, we're gonna leave, no problem. Just maybe be willing to just get a little uncomfortable and say something, address it, and not let silence win the day.
Yeah.
So Yoni, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you. Always good to see you, get to catch up. So thank you again. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Always a pleasure to be with you as well. And thank you again for everything you do. And thank you to all of the viewers. And I'll end, Andrew, if you let me steal, maybe, I don't know if it's the final word, but I always tell people at the end of our tours, like I was saying, seeing is not the same as hearing, or seeing is believing. And also quoting the other rabbinic line of the Idach Zil Gmor, right? Somebody came once to ask the famous Hillel, the famous Torah scholar, can you teach me all of the Torah on one foot? And he said, what you wouldn't do to yourself, don't do it to your neighbor, right? What you wouldn't like done to you, don't do unto others. And then he looks at him and says, and the rest, Vidach Zilgmor, the rest go out and learn, right? The rest is commentary. But really the rest you have to go learn for yourself. So please start that journey. And if something here sparked a question, which I hope it did, take that step as Andrew said. And I thank you in advance for asking questions, for learning more, and opening up that dialogue. Like I said before, education is the road to peace. We really believe it, and looking forward to more meaningful dialogue with you and with your viewers and with whoever is willing to engage.
Yeah, thanks, Yoni.
Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing your comments below. Thank you, Yoni.
Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.